Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for OneGroup's informational update. My name is Allison Dunn, and I have the privilege of working with the OneGroup experts you will hear from shortly today. We started our webinar series back on March 19th, which seems like forever ago right now, and we started it to focus on the coronavirus pandemic. And we've continued with updates throughout the past few months. We're now switching gears in this webinar and future webinars to provide you with any pertinent and timely updates that could affect your business, whether coronavirus related or not. Our goal is to really keep you informed on matters that impact your business, ranging from business insurance and risk management to human resources and employee benefits matters, to name a few. And we do have several of our OneGroup experts with us today. We have Casey Cohn, Senior Managing Consultant, Nate Bradley, Employee Benefits Consultant, Mike Tisdale, Vice President with OneGroup Retirement Advisors, Paul Kader, Vice President of Risk Management, Kelly Goodsell, Vice President of Claims Risk Management, Dennis Ast, Senior Account Executive, Cyber Risk Specialist, and we also have Todd Hoffman with us today, and Todd is our Senior Bank Liaison. And we will be discussing updates to address our clients' frequently asked questions in the areas of human resources, employee benefits, including retirement, claims, risk management, including cyber, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program. We do have some updates there. And we do want to just share our disclaimer with you. This is for informational and educational use only. Nothing in this discussion should be considered legal advice. Please consult with the appropriate attorney or advisor before addressing any situation raised in this discussion. So for today, we've structured this webinar to cover key updates and areas that our clients have been asking about. We also requested that participants share any questions with us before the discussion. We have muted all callers just because of the number of participants on the call. However, we do encourage your questions. So if there's something that you're wondering about that we haven't covered, please feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. Now on to human resources updates. We've witnessed many changes in this area as we're seeing clarifications issued on guidance that's been released, and we will discuss all that in a moment. But first, I just want to share with you some emerging concerns related to employees and mental health. And we've been learning and reading quite a bit about this in the past couple of months as employees are certainly dealing with the coronavirus, and we're learning about the impact with their mental health. So we've been reviewing survey data from various sources. One survey in particular from the Society for Human Resource Management indicates that between 22 and 35% of US employees often experience symptoms of depression as they lived through the COVID-19 pandemic. So this particular survey that I'm referencing was about 1,100 employees, and it found that women, younger workers, and people living with at least one person who's a member of a vulnerable population, such as a healthcare worker or someone with a compromised immune system, those individuals were affected the most. Certainly, we know that COVID-19 is taking a toll emotionally, and it's important for employers to be aware as they may see an impact in the workplace. So the survey results show that there are symptoms of depression, including difficulty concentrating, feelings of failure or letting the family down, hopelessness, little interest or pleasure in pursuing activities, and overall feeling tired. So there are challenges also for those working remotely because they're experiencing feeling out of sight, out of mind, or even worse, feeling as if their work and their dedication are being questioned because they're perhaps not physically in the office each day. So there's certainly some struggles with that as well. Some employees feel as though they must work twice as hard to prove themselves to get recognized for the work they do. And remote employees, a lot of the feedback that we're seeing is that they find that it's difficult the lines are blurred between work and home because they're pretty much at home working most of the time and they're putting in more hours than the average worker. And there's that stress, higher level of stress from being quote unquote on all the time. So here's the concern with all of this. More than 1/3 of all respondents said they have not done anything to cope with their feelings. Only 7% of those who expressed concerns with their mental health had actually contacted a mental health professional. So what can you do? So we have a few quick things to go over as far as what you as employers can do. And they're basic things, but I think that they are worthy of a reminder. The first one is to stay in touch, regular check-ins, especially if you have remote workers, and even if all of your workers are back in the office. The employees should hear from you often, feel supported, and feel cared for. And there's a variety of ways that you can stay in touch. Simple things like ask the employee how they're doing and actually listen to what they're saying and find out how they're feeling and how this is affecting them. Also, we've seen success with administering small surveys that gauge how the employees are feeling and identify any shifts in attitude so you can adjust any communications accordingly. And really just overall staying in touch with your employees. And that certainly will help to keep them on task and make sure you can reset priorities as needed. So staying in touch is really important. Another thing that employers can do is just make sure that employees know it's okay, it's acceptable if somebody needs help. Let your employees know that you recognize this is a time of great stress and uncertainty. Offer resources to them, whether it's reminding them of your employee assistance program, if you have one, or offering resources for mental health support. So that's certainly important to do and to remind people often about that. In addition, you can prioritize the mental health in your benefits. So as you look at your employee benefit plan, make sure that you have appropriate coverages for mental health and look at whether or not you offer an employee assistance program that I just mentioned. If you do offer one, that's great. Look at any limitations on visits or if there's anything that might need to be adjusted within your program to meet the needs of your employees. And some programs out there, specifically wellness programs, have coaching services that can help employees. So it's important to look at that and see if that's something that your employees have access to as well. And we see many employers offering health and wellness tips, different online courses and health challenges to help employees who might be struggling with loneliness, anxiety, or depression. And the last thing really is using technology to help with mental health resources. Telemedicine benefits often have a behavioral health component to it. And it's important to make sure your employees are aware that through the telemedicine benefit, they may be able to offer behavioral health, may be able to access behavioral health. So it is a difficult time for employees. Absolutely. We know that. It's important to be there for them and to make sure that they know that they have resources available. Now we're going to turn to another portion of HR, and that is best practices and different frequently asked questions that we've been receiving. So I will turn it over now to Casey Cohn, who's been working very closely with many of our clients along with the HR team to help them with various HR needs during the coronavirus as well as during regular times as well. Casey?
Thanks so much, Allison. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. I have just a few brief updates on a few different topics that I wanted to spend some time to talk about this afternoon. The first is with regards to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA. You know, as Allison mentioned, when this all kind of started about 3 months ago, which seems like an eternity ago, the FFCRA and other regulations, these guidelines were implemented very, very quickly with little time to really learn and digest the information and the requirements. So now, you know, now as some time has passed, I think it's a good time or a good idea to look back, perhaps audit what's taken place, what has been done within the last several months with regards to these requirements, perhaps look at policies, modify policies as needed or procedures going forward just to ensure compliance. Again, a lot was implemented very quickly with little time to react to it. So I think it's just important to keep some of those things front of mind. And audit, if you can, some of the procedures that did take place and then look to modify those procedures or policies going forward. As a reminder, the FFCRA provisions are in effect at least through the end of this year. And so with that, I just want to talk about some brief refreshers regarding the leave specific to the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So with regard to eligible employees, all employees of covered employers, covered FFCRA employers are eligible for the 2 weeks of paid sick time for those specified reasons related to COVID-19. So all employees of the covered employer. Employees employed for at least 30 days are eligible for up to the additional 10 weeks of paid family leave to care for a child under certain circumstances related to COVID-19. So that is certainly different from the traditional FMLA where, you know, it's at least 12 months of service and a certain number of hours worked, and that within the last 12 months. For that leave, employees need to be employed for at least 30 days. One timely FAQ provided by the DOL that I wanted to talk about with regards to the FFCRA talks about childcare that is closed for the summer. So the question is, I took paid sick leave and am now taking expanded family and medical leave to care for my children whose school is closed for a COVID-19 related reason. After completing distance learning, the children's school closed for summer vacation. So the question is, may I take paid sick leave or expanded family and medical leave to care for my children because their school is closed for summer vacation? The answer is no. Really, the leave is provided because the school or place of care is closed due to a COVID-19 related reason. So summer vacation does not fall under that. Now, certainly if there is a child care provider so during the summer, such as a camp or another program that's closed or unavailable because of COVID-19, then that could satisfy the requirement, but just being closed for summer vacation does not meet that eligibility requirement for the FFCRA leave. Shifting gears a little bit, we continue to receive some questions from clients relating to unemployment insurance. Some are concerned that workers do not or may not want to return as businesses look to reopen just due to the enhanced benefits that some might be receiving on unemployment. So as a reminder, as always, the state makes the decision on unemployment eligibility. It is typically on a case-by-case basis specific to each claimant situation. However, if you do or if an employer does call employees back and the individuals refuse or fail to report to work, you can, as an employer, notify the Department of Labor directly in writing. So just as a reminder, you can notify the New York Department of Labor if someone is refusing to return to work. And again, the state makes the ultimate decision on unemployment eligibility. Shifting gears again, I want to talk a little bit about the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We've talked in past webinars how the EEOC has continued to update guidance listed on its website with regards to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, during the pandemic. There were most recent updates as of June 11th. With regards to reasonable accommodations and returning to work. So I just wanted to share some of those updates. But again, I do encourage folks to check out that guidance, and it is updated quite frequently. And again, with the most recent update was provided on June 11th. So one of the questions that the EEOC provided some clarification on is an employee entitled to an accommodation under the ADA in order to avoid exposing a family member who is at a higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19? The answer is no. The ADA does not require that an employer accommodate an employee without a disability based on the disability-related needs of a family member. So certainly the employer is free to provide certain flexibilities if it chooses to do so to help accommodate that employee, but if the employee's family member has a disability, that employee, an employer does not have to accommodate that employee. And again, certainly they can and make certain flexibilities to try to assist that individual. Another question, as a best practice and in advance of having some or all employees return to the workplace, are there ways for an employer to invite employees to request flexibility in work arrangements? The answer is yes. Employers can make information available in advance to all employees about who to contact if they wish to request a reasonable accommodation for a disability that they might need upon return to the workplace, even if a return to work date has not been announced yet. If those requests are received in advance, the employer can begin the interactive process at that time. An employer can also send out a general notice to all employees who are designated for returning to the workplace, noting that the employer is willing to consider requests for accommodation or flexibilities based on an individualized need. It is important to ensure that anyone receiving those inquiries from those employees knows how to handle them, consistent with federal employment non-discrimination laws. One other item I wanted to talk about today is the Department of Health recently released interim guidance for public and private employers returning to work, or excuse me, employees returning to work following a COVID-19 infection or exposure. This was released on May 31st. And specifically, this guidance provides protocols and policies for employees seeking to return to work after a suspected or confirmed case of COVID-19. It's good information. It's about a 2-page summary. We'll post it to our website so that you can access that should you find yourself in that situation where you need to refer to that guidance. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that we will be sending out a legislative update regarding the recent Supreme Court decision prohibiting discrimination based on an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity. We'll certainly also further discuss this topic during our next webinar, but I wanted to reference that, so stay tuned for a legislative update on that topic. And with that, I will turn it back to Allison.
All right, thank you, Casey. Great updates. We're now going to turn over to Nate Bradley. Nate's going to give an update on employee benefits matters, and Nate's been working closely with our consultants and clients to really watch compliance-related matters and certainly watch what's potentially happening as well for proposed changes. So we'll turn it over to Nate.
Thanks, Allison. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. On the employee benefits front, as it relates to COVID-19, there's really not much new since the last time we spoke. We have seen some carriers extending the date that they will treat COVID-19 related treatment in full. Most notably, Excellus is extending that date through September 7th. As you know, testing is mandated to be covered in full, but treatment was not mandated to be covered in full, but many carriers for their fully insured book of business just went ahead and did that. And a lot of self-insured clients did that as well. So really nothing new in what impacts your plan as it relates to COVID-19. Washington updates, the HEROES Act was passed by the House, I think about a month ago at this point, but it was really DOA as soon as it got to the Senate, and they have not even voted on it yet. Centerpiece of that was state and local government aid, and then more aid to individuals with a couple $100 billion in tax credits for employee retention. And then a lot of the rest was really considered a wish list, things that had little to do with COVID-19, like the U.S. Postal Service. The largest benefits component was expansion of COBRA benefits throughout through next January, but again, nothing has passed. It's all just being discussed. They are starting to look at it again. The other side of the aisle is now putting together their wish list, if you will, and they're looking for things like expanding access to quality and affordable coverage in the wake of the crisis, incentivizing pharmaceutical and medical device companies to relocate to the United States, and then also things like improving telemedicine in rural areas. So things that would touch the general healthcare world, but really probably not have a big impact on your particular plan. But it is very likely that there is going to be a phase 4 of the stimulus package. It's just a matter of what will be in it and when it happens. So stay tuned on that. We'll continue to keep an eye on that for you. A few other updates that have recently been released, IRS type of updates. High deductible health plan and HSA, health savings account amounts have been released for next year. The level to remain in HSA compliant high deductible health plan will remain the same, $1,400 deductible for singles, $2,800 for family coverage. So those of you that may have the minimum required deductibles will not have to make plan design changes for next year to remain HSA compliant. And then those HSAs, like they typically seem to do every year, the maximum amounts that an employee can contribute pre-tax has increased by $50 for singles, $100 for families, up to $3,600 or $7,200. The catch-up, the $1,000 catch-up will remain $1,000 for those that are over 55 years old. And then another update on some numbers is the PCORI fee. That is for self-insured employers. The PCORI fee will be due July 31st, as always, for plan years that ended between January 19 and September of 2019. The fee is $2.45. That was kind of last year's fee. The new fee is $2.54, and that's for any plan years that ended between October of last year and October of this year. So, many of you have 1/1 renewals. That's what your number would be for next year, $2.54. Also, if you are a fully insured group, but you offer a health reimbursement arrangement or an HRA, you also are required to pay the PCORI fee. There's a few different ways that you can calculate the amount. It is on covered lives, not subscribers. So every member on your plan, that fee applies to. And for any of current OneGroup benefits clients, we do all that calculation for you and provide you with the instructions on how to pay. So that will probably be coming out in the next couple of weeks from us. So keep an eye out for that. And it's still July 31st due date. And then lastly, a few carrier updates. We've seen, a lot of people are wondering how is this all going to impact our rates for next year, our renewals? If you're a large self-insured group, you've seen an impact on your claims. I'm sure that they've really dipped unless you were heavily impacted and had a lot of your population seek treatment. But for the smaller group market, the under 100 market, at least speaking locally here in the central New York area, Excellus did file their rates with the state, their requests for what they would like the increases to be next year, and they're in the mid-single digits. So really not a heavy impact at this point. And as it relates to return of premium or credits, because for fully insured groups, you're still paying the same premiums you've paid all year, even though many of your population has not been able to visit their providers' offices. We have seen the two largest carriers nationally, United Healthcare and Anthem, both provide credits to their clients. 5 to 20% is what United Healthcare did, and I think they did it in June, and then Anthem was doing it, I think, with the July payments, and they were returning, $2.5 billion in premium by way of credit to your account. Also, we've seen a lot of ancillary carriers do that as well, dental, vision, things like that, where they're either foregoing the next month's payment due or providing a credit. So things to keep an eye out on your bills. They have notified clients, but I know everyone is getting so many different carrier notifications and broker notifications that may be getting lost in the shuffle. So those are really the benefits updates that we have for today. We continue to keep an eye on these things really so that you don't have to, but please reach out with any questions or clarification that you need.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Now we're going to turn things over to Mike Tisdale. Mike is going to provide some updates on retirement plans. Mike?
Thanks, Allison. Good afternoon, and I hope everyone's doing well. So obviously with companies, trying to adjust to the new normal, a lot of employers don't have the retirement plan top in mind. Not a lot of changes on our end, but we thought we would share some thoughts today on some potential proactive assessments that you could perform that could potentially preempt unwanted plan surprises down the road. So to piggyback on Allison's opening notes about mental health, a large focus for employers that we're talking to, the customers that we work with are really assessing and prioritizing their financial wellness program. So the financial wellness programs have certainly been a hot topic for the past couple of years. However, in the wake of COVID-19, these programs will certainly be in high demand. The 2019 Employee Financial Wellness Survey by Pricewaterhouse showed that even in an economic boom, nearly 3 out of 5 employees said that financial matters were the top source of stress. So as we start finding our way to a new normal, implementing a proactive financial wellness program, may help offset the negative effects of the financial stress for your employees. So, we would encourage you to lean on your advisor that you work with, lean on your record keeper to help build a program that fits your culture and your demographic. The second topic that we've been chatting about with our customers is just to keep in mind your fiduciary risk management. So if you sponsor a retirement plan, then you're having to, or you already have chose whether or not to adopt the CARES Act distribution provisions, which we've chatted about at great length on this call over the past couple of months. But as discussed, this is certainly a fiduciary decision, so it's one that should be thoughtfully considered and documented. During the unprecedented chain of events we're seeing unfold this year, an extra layer of fiduciary care doesn't hurt. So no matter what you decided for your plan, it's extremely important that you just document why you believe you are acting in the best interest of your participants and their beneficiaries. As with an ERISA or a plaintiff attorneys, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So certainly want to make sure that you're documenting that. The third proactive assessment that could be beneficial is projecting non-discrimination testing failures. So as we all know, a number of extreme measures have been taken to help weather COVID-19, including laying off or furloughing employees, perhaps reducing their salaries, reducing or suspending company 401k matches, which can affect the ADP, the actual deferral percentage, and the ACP, the actual contribution percentage. It can affect the retirement plan test results. Certainly taking a mid-year review of that with your third-party administrator, with your advisor, to kind of seek out where you are right now could certainly help alleviate some stress down the road. And there are different plan design options that you can navigate through. So again, just reaching out to your advisor, reaching out to your TPA consultant to provide you that mid-year projection, again, may help anticipate non-discrimination testing failures. And if the projections point towards testing failure, there are a number of plan design options there for you. The last thing to keep in mind is the possibility of a service provider exiting the business. So, recently over the last couple of weeks, there's been some rumors or rumblings surrounding a pretty big name brand provider in the industry exploring the sale of their retirement services business. So you just want to keep an eye on that. Financial firms have been certainly shedding pieces of themselves to focus on products regarded as core to their offering. So scale has been seen as increasingly important to help manage the cost associated with investing in the technology and the compliance systems and such. So it's always been good practice and our guidance to perform a holistic review of all of your providers every 2 years. So perhaps even a bit sooner this time around. Have your advisor kind of go out, quietly to market for you and see if, what is going on with your providers, whether that's your record keeper, your third-party administrator, things of that nature. Those are really the updates that we have for you today. So as always, thank you for your time, and we're happy to help in any way we can. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you. That was really helpful information. We appreciate it. We're now going to turn over to Paul Kader. Paul has been doing quite a bit of work in the risk management space, and Paul has some updates and information to share. Paul?
Thanks, Allison. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. I've got two things for you today. First, a quick update on COVID-19 relative to risk management. Good news side is New York's numbers continue to improve. New York City's opening up in the Capital District here, and our restaurants are opening with indoor seating and things like that. Other counties across the state are progressing through the reopening process and starting to open things up. We're hearing word about sports starting and everything else, and that's all the good news. But there is a reality to consider for us as business owners and business managers, and that's that the virus is still out there. There's no cure, there's no vaccine, and when it gets into an organization, it can devastate. Take a look at what's happening in some of the nursing homes across the state right now. Other states are still seeing rises in hospitalizations, and you've seen numbers as far as positive cases increasing in other states, and that can be associated with the increase in testing across those states. However, what I watch is that increase in hospitalizations. In New York, we're going down in most, if not all places. But what we look at is in those hospitalization cases is that's where people are sick enough to go into the hospital. So it's not really related to just the increase in testing. And as business people, we have to be aware of that because as things are opening up, we're starting to look at getting back on the road and traveling. So take a look at where you're traveling, how you're getting there, trains, planes, and automobiles, and think about the exposures that are associated with that when you go. Caution and care are still warranted throughout your business process. Enforce the elements of your reopening plan. Everybody, I'm sure, has a reopening plan in place right now, and that plan probably includes various phases. And make sure that as you're moving from phase to phase, you're considering what's happening in that phase. For us, as we're starting to open up and doing some traveling, we have to consider where people are going and how they're getting there, what they're going to be exposed to when they arrive, and what they're going to bring back to us when they come back. So think about that as you move from phase to phase in your plan. Don't skip steps or take shortcuts. If you have a plan in place, even though it seems somewhat conservative right now, take those steps and make sure that you're enforcing what's going on out there. Keep communicating with your employees. Make sure that they understand the importance of what you're doing and they understand the reasoning of what you're doing, and take their feedback as far as how they're getting their jobs done. And be wary of what is on the horizon. If nothing else, take a look at what's going on down in Brazil right now. They're in their winter months, and they've seen a pretty significant rise in cases, deaths, hospitalizations, et cetera. And that's us in about 4 or 5 months. And I'm sorry to rain on the summer parade here, but we have to look forward to fall and winter as it approaches. So don't relax your controls. Keep in mind what happens in cold and flu season on a normal year, and think about what we've got coming this year, so stay vigilant on all of that. Other updates from a risk management standpoint, I wanted to pass along something that I've heard probably 3, 4, 5 times a week as we're going through, and that's that umbrella coverages continue to tighten up. You've probably heard, seen, or felt the tightening of the umbrella market, or in an underlying coverage that impacts the umbrella, such as auto or cyber or general liability. Even before COVID-19 hit, and yes, there was a time before COVID-19, we saw that market was tightening, and we heard about the prices going up and things like that, and we're talking to the underwriters. With COVID-19 jumping into the mix, it's infused more uncertainty, which in the language of underwriters means caution, which in the other language of underwriters means higher prices. So what can we do? Well, with COVID, we got to stick to our guns. We've got to stick to your formal, cautious, and forced reopening plan, keep things going, minimize the risk of infection, minimize the risk of any increased losses. Kelly's going to be talking to you a little bit about the claim situation out there, and Dennis is going to be talking to you a little bit about the cyber situation out there. But as you're going through this, one of the big topics that's hit me over the past few months is the auto liability area. Every time we have an account, a client that has any kind of an automobile fleet, truck fleet, over-the-road fleet, whether they're CDL drivers, whether they're drivers using their own vehicles, the underwriters are very cautious about what's happening with that group of people. What they're looking at is the losses in the area have been trending poorly over the past several years, which again makes underwriters nervous, which again translates to higher prices. So what can you do about that? And it's not that difficult. It takes a little bit of effort, but we can help you with that, or your current carrier can help you with that. When you're looking at the auto liability, the auto fleet exposures, the biggest thing is don't have losses. And that's easier said than done, but that's the first thing that the underwriters are going to look at. They're going to look at the losses. The next thing is make sure you have a formal and well-enforced fleet safety program. And I know a lot of folks balk and jump back a little bit when I say have a program in place. But have something in place that's going to deal with the key elements of what the underwriter is looking at. Number one, make sure you're dealing with driver selection and retention. In so many cases, I watch organizations bring on drivers that they really shouldn't be bringing on. They have a bad driving history. They don't even give them a road test, or if they do, they are terrified grabbing that bar at the side of the roof when they're riding with them. But make sure that you're concentrating on who you're bringing into your company that's going to have the vehicles, because you are entrusting them with that vehicle to go out into the public and operate safely. Next, driver performance monitoring. There's a lens program out there, there's motor vehicle reports out there, there's observations and review of accident reports and incident reports. Make sure that you're monitoring how your drivers are doing out there and keep records of that. Driver training. Never hurts to provide drivers with a training program, whether it's a DDC course or whether it's in-house driver training sessions or coffee break meetings or whatever it might be. Have a driver training program. Vehicle condition. Make sure that you're monitoring the vehicle condition, you keep records on your vehicles, and you're putting vehicles out on the road that are safe and are well maintained. Record keeping, especially in the area of CDL drivers, but in all drivers also. Make sure that you keep good records on your vehicles, on your drivers' performance, on your hiring practices and everything else, because underwriters are going to be asking for that when they're looking at your policies. Some of you might be using telematics, that equipment that you can put in your vehicles to sort of monitor safe driving habits, idling, routing, all those different things. They can be used for saving money from a logistics standpoint, and they're very good in monitoring driver habits. So you can use those. I know that a lot of underwriters, if they see that you have telematics, they really give you the sort of the plus in the plus column. Finally, looking at the non-owned vehicle program, those drivers that drive their own vehicles regularly for business purposes, might be managers going to meetings, might be couriers out there driving the vehicles. What kind of program do you have in place as far as they may be carrying their own personal insurance for that, but you want to make sure they have adequate limits to protect the company if they should get into an accident? And also looking at their driving history and things like that. Again, you're entrusting them with the vehicle out in the public. So all those things come together to form this program that you can then lay in front of the underwriter and say, yes, we've had minimal losses and we've got this program in place, and they're going to give you the best benefit of the doubt when they're figuring out their pricing for those coverages. And by implementing a solid program, you're doing three things. You're going to reduce your potential for an accident, you're going to build your defense prior to needing it in case there is an accident, and you're going to build that underwriter's confidence in your organization's ability to prevent significant claims. All of that contributes to a sound fleet management program that's going to contribute to the pricing on the fleet program and the pricing into your umbrella program. Those are things that I've seen happening very much in the past few weeks, months, and I hope you'll take that to heart and implement those controls. So with that, I will pass on back to Allison, and we'll get some more commercial lines stuff here.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. We do have Kelly Goodsell with us this afternoon, and she's going to share some updates on property and casualty coverage and claims. Kelly?
Hi, Allison. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So I just wanted to give a few updates with respect to property and casualty and claims and coverages and things that we're seeing, questions that we're still receiving. As a claims professional for 25 years, I have never experienced anything like this, as I'm sure all of you have not in your day-to-day business operations. So it's very interesting and trying times in the insurance world. A lot of litigation still going on with respect to property and casualty with different spaces as to whether or not COVID-19 is even considered to be a covered cause of loss or not. I do think that it will take some time for this litigation to shake out, and then, the property and casualty world from a claims perspective will have to respond to those claims that have already been submitted. So we continue to monitor what's going on in that world. Just kind of piggyback on what Paul had mentioned with respect to what we're seeing in the markets with respect to rate increases, really kind of across the board. We're also seeing our carriers, if there wasn't a COVID or pandemic exclusion on an existing policy, we are seeing those exclusions being put on new policies and renewal policies. So keep that in mind if that's something that you're concerned about. we're certainly, we would like to have further dialogue with you about that. There is some talk in the marketplace too about offering future pandemic products. So again, we continue to monitor what's going on with the existing insurance policies and potentially new policies that could be forthcoming. Shift gears a little bit with respect to claims. As you can imagine, in the beginning, we saw a lot of workers' compensation claims being presented for, COVID-19 with employees getting sick in the workplace. That kind of has trickled off a little bit. But as we, are looking to reopen our businesses, there is a risk that we could see future workers' compensation claims being presented. I actually was talking to one of our clients earlier today, and they have actually had over 400 of their employees test positive throughout this pandemic. Not all of them are being handled as workers' compensation. The carriers are still being very diligent with respect to going through and investigating each claim on their own basis and making a determination. You may have heard there are some states out there that have passed laws, and we call them the presumption laws out there, that basically just says if you're an employee and you get COVID-19, doesn't really matter where you could have gotten it from. Those presumption laws are automatically making it workers' compensation. That's not necessarily good for any of us. It's going to drive workers' compensation premiums up in the future potentially. And again, it's a moving target. It's some of our regulatory, they can't even pinpoint really the impact that it's going to have on insurance premiums going forward. So we continue to monitor that. We are seeing some claims being presented also in the employment practices space, whether it's discrimination, you didn't allow me to work from home, but you allowed so-and-so to work from home. We're seeing some resignations because people do not want to return to the workplace. So again, everything that we're trying to advise our clients and in the community about documentation and prevention and having a good return back to the employment space program is really the ounce of prevention that you need to avoid those types of future claims being presented against you. We are starting to see some third-party liability claims being presented. I'll just give you a quick example. We have a worker who has tested positive for COVID-19. Unfortunately, could have given it to her spouse, and unfortunately that spouse has passed away. So we now are looking at, a third-party BI claim. So just be mindful of those types of things. Always reach out to us if you have questions relative to a claim or a potential claim or situation that could give rise to a claim, and we'll navigate the waters with you. Lastly, some questions as businesses start to reopen here is liability waivers and people wanting to know, I own a gym and should I be having our clients, sign off on these liability waivers. One thing about liability waivers is they don't stop the lawsuits from coming. And by asking your clients to sign a liability waiver, I do feel could be beneficial, because I think you're just heightening the awareness that although, these are the steps that we're taking as a business to keep you safe, and I'll just use at the gym for an example, and having your clients sign your customers, what have you, sign the liability waivers, it heightens the awareness. But unfortunately, none of this stops future lawsuits. So if you have any questions about any claims, coverages, liability waivers, anything that we've talked about today, feel free to reach out. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you. very helpful information as always. Now we're going to turn to Dennis Ast, and Dennis is going to give some updates on cyber and what's happening in that space right now. Dennis? Dennis, you might be on mute.
I was, and I had such a good introduction. Thanks, Allison. Unfortunately, in the cyberspace, we continue to see an uptick in cyber events, both in general as well as targeted coronavirus-related cyber attacks. In fact, part of the FBI is the IC3 group. So far this year, through the end of May, they've had 320,000 instances reported to them, compared to 400,000 all of last year. So, I mean, at this point, we're certainly on pace to almost double that number from where it was last year. So, you know, and why? You know, cyber criminals are opportunistic, right? They're preying on people's fear and curiosity in some respect, and they're also opportunistic, knowing that there's weaknesses out there that they're going to capitalize on. It all started, you know, with fake coronavirus websites, specifically with the CDC, where if you clicked on the map, it downloaded malware. And then it started to go to targeted coronavirus phishing and smishing. And for those of you that don't know what smishing is, that's really a phishing email, but it's a text messages on your cell phone. So they refer to that as smishing. And we've seen those come from, you know, what looks like the World Health Organization, the CDC, other government agencies, again, in an effort to trick you. There's also been plenty of attempts relative to fake cures, treatments, donations, and then just really general misinformation to take advantage and to psychologically manipulate folks. It's really unfortunate, but I mean, that's how these folks operate. In social media, we've seen a ton of malicious links that are associated with it. So all of a sudden you'll have something pop up that looks like it's for a web page that you may want to go to. Don't click on that. Just go to your browser, type in the web page yourself, know that you're going to the right spot. We've certainly seen an increased attack on the healthcare industry in general, and that's mostly because the cyber criminals are looking for treatments and research data, because if they're a government agency, you know, that means they can jumpstart their government, right? And they don't have to, you know, develop these vaccines or treatments themselves. They can steal it from somebody else. And a lot of this comes from just the increased utilization of remote workers. So many, even though people are going back to work in normal brick and mortar buildings, it's still going to be a long time until everybody gets back. So there's certainly increased remote workers. That does increase the exposures. One of the things that I read this week, and I don't understand the cyber criminals' approach at this, but there's something new called wiper attacks. And it's basically malware that's designed to completely eradicate all data on your system. So it's just completely malicious, right? So ransomware and some other malware, what they're actually trying to do is generate money for the organization that they work for. This is just completely malicious, where it's totally wiping out everything. A couple of other fraud things that are cyber and non-cyber related, but we've seen a lot of fraud with the PPP loans, and the FBI has certainly been investigating those and getting some money back and recouping some of the money. Other thing that's coming up, you know, here in Western New York as well as really throughout the country, is unemployment fraud, where people who have continued to work through the whole time are suddenly getting an unemployment notice in the mail with an unemployment card. And cyber criminals are getting the information, filing for unemployment benefits on your behalf, and then skimming off those benefits to their benefit. So certainly look for those. If any of that does happen, you should certainly contact your HR department. And I'm sure they'll be in contact with their IT department to see if there was any type of cyber attack on their system. Also just want to make comment that the New York Shield Act did come into place on March 21st. That changed a lot of the regulations in New York from a cybersecurity standpoint, from viewing of information to really just having access to information. And it also increased the fines and the notification requirements. So it's trying to improve everybody's cybersecurity. There has been a recent FBI warning on mobile apps. That seems to be the next vector that cyber criminals are attacking, our mobile apps. So certainly be careful with your mobile apps. Make sure that you're checking things on a frequent basis to make sure nothing looks suspicious on those. So what can you do about this? So some good cyber hygiene practices is, as always, employee training. You know, think before you click. Don't panic. Just take your time when you're opening up that email. If it doesn't feel or look right, don't open it. Send it to your IT folks to take a look at as suspicious. Have multi-factor authentication in place in utilization of a VPN. There has been some recent attacks on certain VPN services, but a lot of patches are going out with those to clean up some of those issues. Always use strong passwords, and better yet, use passphrases. Make it difficult for these cyber criminals to access your system. Don't use baloney 1. Don't use 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, have something much stronger in place. Don't use public Wi-Fi. Even with the VPN, you know, public Wi-Fi does offer an exposure for cyber criminals to get into your system. With the utilization of so many remote workers, you should certainly have a mobile device security protocol in place so that you can secure those devices. If one does get lost or stolen, you can wipe it instantly to be able to protect your information. You should install and update anti-malware, specifically next generation and artificial intelligence. The cyber criminals continue to get smarter all the time, and you need to stay one step ahead of them with the better current anti-malware. Stay current with your patching and updates. This is really critical. That's how cyber criminals get into your space, is because you haven't patched the known vulnerability. Most of those notices that you get on your, say, your cell phone about updates are available, they're almost always security because they've identified a flaw. So even with your internal system, patch often, keep it updated. Do a risk assessment, know what you have. There's a NIST framework that's out there that's free to the public. It's a great starting place. It's scalable, whether you're a small company, a large company. If you want to go in depth or just stay very, you know, superficial on the surface just to do an initial analysis, it really does lend itself to all of that. So it's a great framework to use. Back up your systems. Test those backups to make sure that they're not infected, and if possible, air gap, which means disconnect one of those backups completely from the system so that they can't be accessed. On backups, you certainly need to know if that backup was infected. You don't want to restart with that backup too soon, because you do need to look at those initial logs in your system to be able to determine what the bad actors, the cyber criminals, got access to. If you recreate from the backup too quickly, you may lose all of that data. Vendor management, make sure that you have contracts that are beneficial to you. In most cases, any type of IT contracts will not hold themselves responsible, won't indemnify or hold you harmless if a breach happens on their end. But if you simply ask, in most cases, they will provide you with that. And then the biggest thing that you can do is have a cyber response plan. Know what you're going to do if something takes place. Who are you going to call first? If you have an insurance policy for cyber, there's typically a breach coach associated with it. If not, just know as an organization who's that first phone call going to be to. Time is of the essence in that standpoint in terms of notification, shutting your system down at the appropriate time so that it doesn't get worse. So if you take anything away, just have a cyber response plan. So, and with that, I'll turn it back to Allison. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to turn things over to Todd Hoffman. Todd is our last, and I always say we're saving the best topic for last. Next time, Todd, I promise we'll have you go first. But Todd's going to give us some updates as they relate to the Paycheck Protection Program. Todd, it's all you.
All right. Thanks, Allison. What an introduction. So I'm just going to do a quick update on the PPP program. Hopefully everybody's aware that Congress recently passed an amendment to the program called the Paycheck Protection Flexibility Act. And these changes were some of the things that we were hoping were coming and that are overall beneficial for everyone. So I'm going to touch on them very briefly for you, the major changes that occurred. First of all, they've extended the coverage period for borrowers from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So that 8-week period where you had to spend all your money has been extended to 24. However, a lot of people had already gone with the 8 weeks and you utilize that, so you can still use that 8-week period for forgiveness purposes. Obviously, the flexibility was designed to make it easier for the borrowers to reach full or almost full loan forgiveness. They also extended the safe harbor date from 6/30/20 to 12/31/20, so through the year end. for the restoration of employee and salary reductions that were made prior to April 26th. Changes also amended the threshold requirement for the use of PPP loan proceeds for payroll expenses. What they did there was decrease it from 75% to 60%. So now you can use up to, but not more than 40% of the total PPP funds on permissible non-payroll expenses. So that's a big one. That was one of the primary issues, and hopefully that made sense to everybody. It extended the repayment terms on the non-forgivable portion of the loan from 2 to 5 years, and it extended the interest deferment period from 6 months to 1 year. It also says that if borrowers have not applied for forgiveness 10 months after the end of their covered period, they would be required at that point to start making payments on their PPP loan. Also, there were some major changes to the exemptions for loan forgiveness, reductions, and FTE headcounts. This is significant. So if a borrower's reduction in the number of FTEs will not affect forgiveness if the borrower in good faith is able to document that they were unable to rehire individuals who were employees on 2/15/20 and or they were unable to hire similarly qualified employees for those unfilled positions on or before 12/31/20. And what that applies to, what the primary focus is there, is a lot of that unemployment, the fact that people were making more money on unemployment and didn't want to come back to work. So even if you in good faith were trying to hire people back or couldn't find people, it addressed that issues. Also, it says if you are unable to return to the same level of business activity that you were at prior to 2/15/20 due to compliance with CDC, OSHA, or other COVID guidelines that said you cannot begin your business again, they will give you a pass on that. As always, there's a number of questions that remain unanswered. There's information that's still unclear, but everyone expects the SBA to continue to issue further guidance and clarification if time goes on. Again, my recommendation, as always, is consult with your CPA or your business advisor. Talk to your banker. Your CPA is probably your best bet. If you do have questions or you don't know who to talk to, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I will be happy to point you in the right direction. That's all I had. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Todd, so much. We're just finishing under an hour, which is perfect. So thank you so much to all of our OneGroup experts. We appreciate your expertise in sharing really pertinent, timely information that is very helpful. And thank you to all of you for participating in our update series. If you do have topics you'd like us to cover in our future updates, please let us know. We do plan to do these regularly. We will continue posting information to our website, which is onegroup.com. We do have a COVID section, and certainly any materials referenced in today's discussion will be posted as well. If there's any follow-up needed, please reach out to your OneGroup contact with any additional questions, and we certainly continue to be here. We look forward to helping you and helping our communities in the future. Thank you, everyone.